Every empire knows us by number, but the Bible says the Lamb of God knows us by our name. So sometimes when we're in the process of learning how to be worshipers, right? Really actively following Jesus kind of worshipers, right? We come up on mountains in our lives, and maybe we think, oh man, if I could just muster a little faith, I could move the mountain. And then sometimes the mountain just doesn't move. And then if you kind of are listening, maybe over time you'll realize maybe God put the mountain there not for the mountain to be moved, but to learn how to climb it. And right? Have you experienced this in your own life? And so I was like, man, we got to write a song about that. So I'm climbing a mountain my faith could not move. It's the only way forward. It's the only way through. No bridges or highways, directions or plans. These pathways are prisons. Remind me again that I've got a Father who knows me by name, and I've got a shepherd who won't lead me astray. And I've got a future, I've got a hope, I've got a promise, I'm never alone. is a journey through the highs and lows. There's no need to hurry. Let's take it slow. The time we've been given is the treasure we hold. And the older I'm getting, there's one thing I know, that I've got a Father who knows me by name. I've got a shepherd who won't lead me astray. I've got a future. I've got a hope. I've got a promise. I'm never alone. Your goodness and mercy are following me all the days of my life. Following me, my dwelling will be the house of the Lord forever. Oh, and I will not fear what I do not know, what I misunderstand, cannot control. Oh, my dwelling will be the house of the Lord forever. Oh, goodness and mercy are following me all the days of my life. Following me, my dwelling will be the house of the Lord forever. I will not fear what I do not know, what I misunderstand, cannot control. Oh, my dwelling will be the house of the Lord forever. 'Cause I've got a Father who knows me by name, and I've got a shepherd who won't lead me astray. I've got a future. I've got a hope. I've got a promise. I'm never Thank you, Lord. One of the nice things about the COVID time was that everybody knew where each other was. You know? And so a friend of mine from New Zealand, and my daughter was home from college, and a friend of mine from New Zealand was around, and he called me and said, let's write a worship song about just loving God back the way that he's first loved us. And I said, I'm in, let's do it. So in every way we can love God back. Oh, you look me in the eyes, Lord. You hold me by the hand. You don't leave when I'm wild, God. You just sit and watch the dance. And when I am afraid, you're closer than a friend. Wide open and awake, I wanna love you just like that. The whole world sits at your table. The poor, the blind, the lame. You don't see all the labels. You're not asking who's to blame. You never look away. You love me as I am, forever unashamed. Wanna love you just like that. God, and like a river, you keep on going from source to sea the same. Like a wild wind, you keep on blowing. Your love will not be tamed. It flares my heart into a flame. This fire is gonna last. For all my life I'll give you praise. I wanna love you just like that. patient and subtle, yet restless to be with you. I wanna be with you. Amen. So a friend of mine said, hey, if you want to be with Jesus, this friend of mine, Charles Stock, Life Center in Harrisburg, he's been a pastor there. He's 70 now. He's a wonderful man of God. And he always challenges me whenever I'm with him, hey, I don't hear a lot of worship songs about, I always hear worship songs about if we could just get up there and rip the roof off and get up there. If we could just get up there, Jason, then we could get to God. But he said, what about when those friends rip the roof off to lower their friend down to God, right? Sometimes, Jason, we have to be lowered down. Like just about the time we trap God up there, we find Jesus down here. And what's the goal of our worship this morning and every morning? Is to be with God. I just want to be where you are, Jesus. Is that your prayer? That's my prayer. And so I said, let's write a song about that. And then I realized, oh my goodness, there's so many verses, that we could write. This could be like a Bob Dylan song or something. So it starts here. If I was a rich man, would I hold on to it? Or hold back nothing and let you change my world? Money, power, and position, when it comes down to it, it ain't worth a thing if I can't have you. Say, lower me down, oh Jesus, lower me down, I wanna be with you. You say, lower me down, oh Jesus, lower me down, oh I wanna be with you, be with you. Zacchaeus, if I were Zacchaeus, which means pure and innocent, if I was a climber in the sycamore tree, you could call me a traitor, you could call me anything, but Jesus is calling, and he's calling to me. Oh, to you, to get to you. Oh, the deaf and the blind and the poor in spirit, we're all desperately trying to get to you, to get to you. Oh, the deaf and the blind and the poor in spirit, we're all desperately trying to get to you, to get to you. So when you reach for the sky and you cannot get to it, and you try and don't know what to do, and you feel paralyzed and just can't get moving, 'cause the weight of the world has got its hold on you. These are troubling times and people are hurting. We are crowded with lies and counterfeit truth, but the faithful will rise to carry the burden. We will rip off this rooftop to get to you. Lower me down, oh Jesus. Oh, lower me down. We wanna be with you, be with you. Oh, lower me down, oh Jesus. Lower me down. I wanna be with you. 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 Yeah. When I'm saying that, oh, the deaf and the blind and the poor in spirit, I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about me. I'll never forget going to see a blind Jesuit priest give a 4-day silent retreat and thinking in my mind, oh, wouldn't it be wonderful if God, if you opened his eyes and he could see. And then about 2 days into the retreat, I realized, oh, I'm so sorry, Lord. He can see. I'm the one that's blind. And I think starting to realize that the moment you realize you're blind, that's when you actually start to see. The moment you realize you're deaf, that's when you actually start to hear. The more you realize you're poor and in need of God for everything, that's when you get introduced to the riches of God's kingdom, right? So, oh, the deaf and the blind, us, and the poor in spirit, that's why we're here every Sunday morning, right? We're all desperately trying to get to you, to get to you, to get to you. Oh, yeah. Oh, the deaf and the blind and the poor in spirit, we're all desperately trying to get to you. Every table is an altar. Every breath is a gift from you. Every moment is a treasure. Every day is a kiss from you. Let our heart be awake, be awake. Let our heart be awake, be awake. Let our hearts be awake, be awake. Break the bread, pour the wine. Let our hearts come alive in your presence, in your presence. And let our fear fall away. Let our faith rise today in your presence, in your presence, Jesus. And every stranger has a story. Every story's being told by you. We're all children on a journey. Yes, we are. Jesus, only you can lead us through. Let our heart be awake, be awake. Let our heart be awake, be awake. Let our heart be awake, be awake. Break the bread and pour the wine. Let our hearts come alive in your presence, in your presence. Let our fear fall away. Let our faith rise today in your presence, in your presence. We will shout your name, King of glory. We will stand and sing, you are holy. And we will pour out praise, for you are worthy of our lives. Oh, now and forever. We will shout your name, King of glory. We will stand and sing, you are holy. We will pour out praise, for you are worthy of our lives. Oh, now and forever. So break the bread, pour the wine. Let our hearts come alive in your presence, in your presence. And let our fear, let it fall away. Let our faith rise today in your presence, in your presence. Would you whisper in my ear? Let it find room in my heart. Like a garden, let your words begin to grow. Would you whisper in my ear? Let it find room in my heart. Like a garden, let your words begin to grow. And when my faith is prone to fear, oh, remind me of your love. Oh, remind me that you never let me go. You never let me go. So remind me, remind me, remind me of your love. Remind me, remind me, remind me of your love. Jesus, remind me, remind me, remind me of your love. Oh, remind me of your love. And whisper, whisper, whisper in my ear. Surprise us, Lord, and tell me words I thought I'd never hear. Show me, show me, show me what you see. Illuminate, illuminate what's right in front of me. So we say, Father, make us ready for all our hands of song. We can hear it rain. This garden's gonna grow. The Spirit keep us steady. Seasons come and go, to never stop believing. This garden's gonna grow. This garden's gonna grow. This garden's gonna grow. To be kind, teach us in the waiting, this garden's gonna grow. Mother, don't you worry, we won't let it die. All that you have dreamed for, we'll watch it come alive. Mother, don't you worry, so let the soul of life be watered. Let our light shine a little brighter. It'll take time. It'll take time. If you want to resurrect a marriage, it'll take time. Communities, churches, it'll take time. Gardens. And time can move so slow. But this garden's gonna grow. There are these beautiful psalms that in the Bible where the psalmist actually in prayer speaks to himself. I love these. And so I got together with a friend of mine. I said, we got to write one of these kind of psalms. It's an awkward kind of thing, but it just says this. It says, return, return, oh my soul, to your rest, to your home. Return, return, oh my soul. Never far away, never on your own. Return. Return, oh my and the pain. You transform me through the wilderness when I can't find my way, running from the very part of me asking me to stay. You welcome me home to where I belong. You transform me through the darkness, the chaos and the pain. You transform me through the wilderness where I can't find my way, running from the very part of me asking me to stay. You welcome me home to where I belong. Return, return, oh my soul, to your rest, to your rest, to your home. Return, return, oh my soul, never far away, never on your own. Return. Yeah, amen. It's great having Brandon with me. Al Sergel. What a gift being here. I love being with Josh. Gosh. I know you do. I was and there was a time not long ago when the sun did shine and the sower sowed and the rain did rain and the crops did grow. It was a time before machinery, a time before certainty, a time before we bought the lie, a time before the farmer died, when we had trusting hearts and human soul. We sang that song earlier, This Garden's Gonna Grow. And it'll take time, and time can move so slow, but this garden's gonna grow. I think sometimes what happens, I remember reading Wendell Berry when I wrote Farmer in the Field, and I wrote that from the context of reading his writings prophesying to the future of America, that one day we would realize what we did in the 50s by destroying the farming population and creating machines that would make our food. One day in the future, we'd realize that our need for certainty, right? Because, well, sometimes, the sun and the these are mercy gifts, right? That's what Merton called them, sun and rain, which means mercy gifts are always unpredictable. So let's create predictability and certainty out of our world. And it seemed philanthropic, you know? Hey, we could get machines to make our food, and then nobody would starve, and we could make as much food as we want, and we wouldn't have to depend on sun and rain anymore. And he says, one day in the future, people will realize that our need for certainty is actually poisoning us. And then what we'll want to do is we'll want to raise up farmers again, but what we'll realize is it's difficult to raise up a farmer in a 2-week or 2-month or 2-year program. Farmers have to be raised to the trade because why? Because values have to be instilled in them. Real, true, organic farming, which is a lot of what we do in the kingdom. A lot of what Jesus actually teaches us. It takes time. It takes time to raise a poet, right? To bring language, right? It takes time. What do you mean it takes? It takes time to develop a circular thinker. It takes time. It takes time. And I think about that sometimes. The machinery even, and we know this, worship leaders, and we chatted yesterday, we know this intuitively. The machinery of worship, it can be a wonderful thing, but the danger of it is that it speeds us along at such a rate in our expression that, you know, as if the expression is what really matters to God. But it's not the expression that matters to God. I mean, I think God receives our expression, but what he loves is our activity. What he longs for is our activity. What he longs for is, just think about the world, how quickly it would change if all over the world, just every Christian lived actively what they express in song on a Sunday. If we lived it actively. Whew. And then what if our living active, and that's what I love about being around active worshipers. You can go anywhere with active worshipers. Active worshipers, you can read a poem and they'll be like, yes, God. You know, active worshipers, people that the lives have been touched and transformed, right? But it takes time. It takes time to grow a garden. It takes time to wait on sunshine and rain, to depend. How do you raise a real farmer that cares more about the soil than the product? It doesn't mean that a real farmer doesn't care about the product, but a true farmer, right? In my opinion, a Jesus-led farmer, right, will give up produce for a year to save the soil. How do we become that kind of people? Because that's the kind of person Jesus is, and that's who we're following. I was reminded of this story that I read years ago. It's about a man that went back to his grandfather's farm and decided to live on it the rest of his life and make all things new on it and grow it and bring it back to life. And he said, for many years, my walks have taken me down this old fence row in a wooded hollow on what once was my grandfather's farm. He says, and I noticed there's this battered old galvanized bucket just hanging on a fence post near the head of the hollow. And over the years, he says, I never go by that old rusty bucket without looking inside. For what's going on in that bucket is the most momentous thing I know. It's the greatest miracle that I've ever heard of. It's actually making earth. Talking about making all things new, right? He says, this is how it happens. The old bucket, probably hung by my grandfather, has actually been there for so many autumns, and leaves have fallen around it, and some have fallen into it or been carried into it by squirrels, or mice and squirrels have eaten the meat of the nuts and left the shells, and they and other animals have left their droppings. That's amazing. I love that. Especially if you extend that metaphor, right, to what we do even as a community or even as the church, right? How all things are made new. Droppings are a part of it. Animals just coming around, leaving their droppings. Insects have flown into the bucket and died and decayed. Birds have scratched in it and left their droppings, or perhaps a feather or two. I love how many times he says droppings. This slow work of growth and death, gravity and decay, which is the chief work of the world, has by now produced in the bottom of the bucket several inches of black humus. And I look into that bucket with fascination, because I am a farmer of sorts and an artist of sorts, and I recognize in there an artistry and a farming far superior to mine, or to that of any human. And I've seen that process at work over and over in most of the land surface of the world. All creatures die into it, and they live by it. It's a slow work. I love to go to Jesuit retreats. I've been trying to get Josh out to one, but then COVID hit, and I love to go for 4 days of silence. And there's this wonderful priest by the name of Father Larry Gillick that I mentioned earlier, who happens to be blind, because he can actually see better than most of us. And when he was in his early 40s, he's in his late 70s now, but when he was in his early 40s, he actually was a bit depressed, and he was teaching poetry classes to freshman guys at Creighton University. And he said most of these guys, they hated poetry, number one, and they weren't much interested in trying to get their grades up, although most of them were not doing well in the class. And he said, so I was a little bit depressed teaching these guys poetry, because none of them wanted to be there anyway, you know. And he said, and so he was blinded when he was 8 years old. He fell down, hit his head, and then blindness kind of happened to him. But one of the mornings, he said, I woke from a dream that I was having, and in the dream, the Spirit of the Lord spoke to my spirit and said, Larry, why don't you run anymore? And that's all he heard. Why don't you run anymore? You loved running. That's what he heard. So he woke up, and his response to that dream, he woke up from the dream, and it was morning, and he said, well, I don't run anymore, Lord, because, I'm blind. But he never heard anything back other than just that longing of God for him to do what he loved so much and enjoyed. It was almost like God wasn't taking a no. He said, so I couldn't, it was like God deposited that in my heart, and I could make fun of the request as much as I wanted, or the statement, but you've had that happen to you. It just kept growing inside of him. He said, so I got this idea. I started thinking all day, why don't I run anymore? I loved running. Well, maybe shame or various things.
So he gets this idea. He asks his poetry class, he says, "Does anybody in here run marathons?" And one of the guys was like, "Yeah, I run marathons." He said, "Would you like to earn extra credit?" Because internally he knew he needed it, you know what I mean? So he said, "Would you like to earn some extra credit in this class?" He said, "Yeah, I'd love to." He said, "Well, then meet me on Tuesday morning at the locker room." So what he did was he created a tether system. And he literally had a rope. And he tied himself to this kid. And then the kid led him and taught him how to run marathons. And from the time he was 40 to the last time I saw him, he's got to be close to 80 now. I don't know if he still does it. But from the time he was 40 to the last time I saw him, he's run a marathon at least once a year. Tied to somebody. You talk about breaking off shame, but also a slow process of making all things new again and breaking outside of the realm of like what we think is possible. God said, let's lift the roof off of what your possibility framework is. One time I was up there taking a walk, and he just went running by me. And so I asked him later, I said, "Father Gillick, how do you do that?" He said, "Oh, well, they don't let me go do this all the time, but if I got a straight shot, sometimes they'll just let me go on my own." I said, that is so special. And so I always love to bring friends, worship leaders, But, a lot of us worship leaders, we're used to lights and fanciness. And we're used to lights and fanciness and all that stuff. And so I brought all these worship leaders with me to see Father Gillick. Of course, I was telling them all these stories about Father Gillick, and they were super amped to see him and excited. And so they had built a new center at the retreat house, and Father Gillick, he's not going to have somebody lead him to his chair to sit down and give his first talk. So I have all these worship leaders, they're sitting around, and they're used to like Atlanta style, Nashville, LA style like ministers, which is like not what they were going to experience. So Father Gillick, they introduced Father Gillick as our retreat director for the weekend. And the first thing that happened was Father Gillick, he walks up and there's a wall. And he walks up and he runs right into the wall. Because it was a new facility, so he didn't know it yet. He runs into the wall. And one of my buddies, Micah Lothar, who was with me, later on that week, he asked him, he said, Father Gillick, he was kind of nervous about venturing out into a new space in his life. And Father Gillick looked at him and said, Micah, take a look at my face. And Micah looked at his face. He said, you see all those scars? Micah said, yeah. He said, if I just sat around and didn't venture out into new spaces, right? If I was so afraid of getting these scars, I'd never do anything. I'd just sit around. I have so many scars because I just venture out. Go for it, Micah. Micah was so encouraged by that. But there he is. He makes this entry, runs into the wall, what an entry, For all those Enneagram 3s, if you know the Enneagram, it's like all the performance people, they're like, or the 7s, they're like, oh God, I don't know what to do with this. He's making his way down the wall, ends up hitting his head on a light that's off the wall, then finally makes his way to his seat. And we, of course, don't know what to do. Do we help him? Do we, because that could be like dishonoring almost. That's the feeling. As us guys, we were like, do we help him? Do we not? There's all this tension in the room, and he just let the tension be there. And then he finally got his way to his seat. He puts his Braille Bible over his lap. He flips on his lapel microphone, which is also awkward. It's just like, and then the first words out of his mouth, I didn't even know it at the time, but it was a Mary Oliver poem. Sits down, flips that lapel on, Braille Bible over his lap, and he starts and he says, things take the time they take. I look at over all of my friends that are worship leaders. They're all looking at me. Tears are running down their face. Because the moment had so much tension, and his resolve wasn't, I'm going to resolve all that tension for you. It was just, things take the time they take. I later on read that from Mary Oliver. It's actually, the full quote is, it's just one little small little poem she wrote. She just says, things take the time they take. Don't worry. How many roads did St. Augustine follow before he became St. Augustine? Period. That's the quote. It's amazing. Things take the time they take. I was reading a conversation book by Conversations with Wendell Berry. And he was asked by a person that, because Wendell Berry's written 60 some odd books and lots of articles, and he's an amazing writer if you've ever read his stuff. Poet. And so this person was asking with really great intentions, Wendell, why don't you use a computer? Because he refuses to use a computer. He only uses it, he's in his 90s, he only uses a typewriter. Still to this day. And then has his manuscripts, brought into the computer world by somebody else. And why don't you use like a computer? Why you could write so much more if you used a computer. This is what listen to this. He says this. He says, well, I actually think that would be a really bad mistake. That's his answer. I thought, well, okay, I won't listen to this guy. Maybe he's just grumpy, And then this is how he answers them. I even love this. With people that are really wise, often it takes a little time. You ask them a question and they start talking about plumbing or something. You know what I mean? It's like they go over here and then they take you on this journey to give you the answer. You're probably going to have to wait for a good story or a parable, right? This is what he says. This is his answer. You could write so much faster. This is what he said. This is his answer to you could write so much faster if you had a computer. He says, well, you see, when you have a farm, it really doesn't make any difference how wound up you get. If you're gonna grow corn, then you're gonna have to slow down to the speed of corn. If you're an artist, you have a certain capacity to work well. Your own speed and endurance. This is what he says. He says, I've never bought the argument made to me repeatedly that if I had a computer, I could write faster. He says, I know beyond any doubt, I love this, I know beyond any doubt that I can write, and he's in his 90s, so he probably knows, right? I know beyond any doubt that I can write as well as I can write at a sustained rate of 2 or 3 pages a day. If I wrote more than that, my work would actually be worse. It wouldn't be better. The refusal to speed up, to hitch myself to these mechanisms that impose speed on us, is simply a way of me staying in real time. Now listen, it's the way I stay in real time. Which spoke to me, because I don't want to, in worship or in writing or in pastoring or in ministry, I don't want to get out of real time. I want to stay in real time. Life of Jesus is all about real time. It's not about escaping real time. It's about staying. Jesus is never about escape. Entertainment, it's never about entertainment. Because entertainment is actually by its very root meaning, it means to detain you all from entry. Me from entry. That's what entertainment is to detain from entry. We aren't entertainers. We are inviters. We invite, we illuminate, we invite. This is what Jesus calls us to. Everything's an invitation, even distractions, even interruptions. He says, if I hitch myself to the mechanisms that impose speed on us, simply a way of staying within real time, the time in which things grow, in which good work is done. Taking the adjective good off the process might speed things up. But if you aren't interested in working well, why work? I've been reading a fascinating book about wine, he says, Adventures on the Wine Route, by a Californian named Kermit Lynch. I'm reading this because it's also, this is how you get the information. They take you on a journey. People that have wisdom take you on a journey, and you have to wait for the answers. They just don't come like this in a little, now we have the patience of what our social media is training us to have patience for. So now what is it going to be, like 30 seconds? That's our patience, or 15? And then what is it going to be? We got to develop muscles to receive. So he says, he writes that specialists are now telling vintners how they can speed up the winemaking process with heat and chemicals. He says, the point that Mr. Lynch makes is that one can speed up the winemaking process, but what one actually has as a result is not, properly speaking, wine. It's actually a kind of expensive mouthwash. Lynch talks about wine as an artifact and about how impressionable it is. Real wine, good wine. Don't think about wine if you're not a wine person. Just think about the greater metaphor, how it applies to you. Whatever wine you're making, the sermons, the songs, the ideas, instead of the snap of the finger, right? Good wine is something that comes about in its own time. Listen to this. If the vintner wants real wine, he or she will have to accept its rate of becoming. Lord, have mercy on the farmer in the field. Lord, have mercy on the poor, the weak, the real. Lord, have mercy, for we have played the devil's game. Lord, have mercy like sunshine and rain. I remember I wrote a song in my 30s. It was a weird song. The second verse of it says, I'm moving slower. I take a little longer. But I'm healing deeper. I'm feeling stronger. And it's tearing down defenses and opening my senses to the wonder of a father crying out, come now, let's reason together. Come now. The Father's calling you home. So when we follow Jesus through the Gospels, we find Luke 18:16, for instance. I love this. Let the children come to me, for such is the kingdom of heaven. What I love about that is that his disciples and everybody around him were so frustrated by how that was interrupting Jesus' flow. What you see in let the children come to me isn't just children shouldn't be around Jesus. It's that children by their very nature have a way of slowing you down. This is why often what you'll find grandparents, at least in our family structure, grandparents and children, they get each other. Everybody in their 30s and 40s, we're all screwing up the world. The grandparents, they get each other. The child doesn't know any better. The grandfather or the grandmother, they know all too well. And so they get each other. Why? Because everything is at the rate of becoming. It's just, it doesn't, especially children when they're very young, right? I remember an older woman in our church once when our kids were real little. She said to us, let your youngest child take your family on a walk if you want to have an experience. And we did it. It was Lucy. She was our youngest at the time, and we let her take us all on a walk at our favorite place to go walking. Well, within just a few minutes, the experiment was over because everybody was so frustrated because a little 2-year-old or 3-year-old, the way, little toddlers, they'll just anything, like the red keyboard. And their direction, they'll go this way and then back this way, and then there's no straight line with those kids, you know what I mean? And they're leading us, and Sam is already to the spots that he wants to get to. This is slowing him down. Jesus says, no, guys, don't, let the children come to me. Jesus is constantly being willing to be interrupted. And then so often, if you notice that about Jesus, just read the Gospels with that in mind. How many times Jesus says, it's okay, I'll be interrupted. I'm not afraid to be slowed down. Because what? Because things take the time they take. Allow the rate of becoming. Even this interruption right now, how we respond in our attitude to it, your attitude, my attitude, to even interruptions in our daily life. It's not that every interruption is an invitation, but most will be based on our attitude. I've always loved this. We sang about it earlier. I've been the blind man on the road. You know, blind man Bartimaeus. He's been blind since he was born, and yet Jesus asks, what can I do for you? I love how he slows himself down. What can I do for you? Even that shows the slow nature of God. I remember asking the Lord, why did you ask him, what can you do for him? And the Lord answered me slowly. Because when I asked him, it was in the daytime, and he answered me at 3 a.m. And it was one of those moments that I could wake up and write it down, or I could forget it forever. And I remember I got up and I wrote it down. It was like a whisper in the wind that said, because I don't want to just fix humanity, I want to know you. Jesus could have just waved his hand over everything, but he didn't do that. He didn't assume or presume to know what he could do for Bartimaeus. He asked Bartimaeus, what can I do for you? Try to answer that question sometime in your own private time. What can I do for you, Jason? It's harder to answer that question than we think. Listen for the Lord to ask you that question. What can I do for you? Try it sometime today. Because sometimes we don't even know what we need him to do for us, if we're really honest. And Jesus wants to push us into that, and that is a slow work as well. I love how Jesus always, in Mark 1, we see him right away. Early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus gets up and leaves the house and went off to a solitary place to pray. It's like he's like always slowing things down. Just about the time he feeds the 5,000, he gets on a boat to get away. Just about the time he does this miracle, he gets on a boat or walks away. He's always trying to slow the momentum down. I love how we teach children this about God. And Jesus, he's standing at the door and knocking, right? He's standing at the door and he's knocking. Some churches still have that picture. Jesus standing at the door of your heart and knocking. I just think that's such a beautiful picture that Jesus, we live in a world that it's like, push the door down. Ah, grab them. Right? Make them believe. And yet we still have this. Let me show you Jesus. He still knocks. He's the God of everything. He created it all. He never barges in. He's slow enough to knock. No presumption. No assuming. Knocking at your door, he says, and I'm standing knocking at your door, and whoever opens the door and lets me in. Think about the slow work of that. Think about how long he has to knock at some people's door or our door. And whoever lets me in, I will come in and I will eat with them and they'll eat with me. I'm not going to push it down. I'm going to wait until you open it. Another just little thought is Jesus knows, the Bible says, what you need before you even ask. But yet, he still waits for me to ask. Exodus 4:10. I love how it talks about Moses, the great deliverer, right? And I think my whole life I maybe thought that this was a lacking. This verse illuminated some sort of lacking in Moses, and that I've always thought, oh yeah, God just overlooked the lack. I love this verse. And Moses said to the Lord, I'm not eloquent, I'm slow of speech, and I'm slow of tongue. Just that. I think more and more I'm realizing it's like God saying, that's actually exactly what I'm looking for. That's actually exactly what I need, Moses. I don't need fast talkers. I need somebody that would be. Have you ever noticed that the more you wait in life, the more you listen? Like even right now, I speak better the more I listen, like even in a moment. Even in a moment that I'm giving a talk. If I can hear, I can speak. If you can't hear, you're not going to speak well. And a lot of us, right, we talk at such a rate, such a speed, but we're actually not hearing. We're not waiting, listening. I'm not eloquent, I'm slow of speech, and I'm slow of tongue. And God says, that's actually not lacking for you. That's exactly what I need. And I think in our world today, we're the pollution that is happening to us, we don't even realize it because the information that's coming, it's coming so fast. My son, he's 12, Oliver, he was looking at his Apple computer. I mean, these should be banned from church. I'm sorry. They should, I'm just kidding, but Isn't that funny? Like, should we really trust something with a bite out of it, an apple with a bite out of it? That's what Oliver said to me. Look what they did to us. Look what they did to. Am I kidding? I'm kidding. I like technology. I think it can be really helpful, but should we really trust an apple with a bite out of it? And you just had to know. You just had to know. And the information age it's destroying us. Because you're not meant to know all that. You're not meant to know all that. You cannot handle it. You can't handle it. So what's the answer? We got to get away daily. We got to spend time. We've got to cultivate a space where we don't let those things push us anymore. Wait. Even sometimes, don't you have to do this sometimes? That in ministry, sometimes people want to share something with me, and I just say, have you ever had to do this where you're just like, I don't need to know that information. I just don't need to know it. You don't need to know it. You know? Listen to news enough to get orient yourself to the way the world sees the world. This is kind of what's going on. And then stop with the information overload. And go to the Psalms. Go to your neighbor. Go to your friend. Go to your family. Go to your wife. Go to your children. Have conversation. Have dialogue. What are you seeing? Hope in the future. Anyway. God created us to be farmers, to grow. I only have 2 minutes and 26 seconds. Can I sing a song over them? Do we have enough time, Josh? I mean, you're the boss. Okay. So I was thinking about this, that just even raising a family. That's what Mother Teresa said. She goes, if you want to change the world, just go home and raise a family. That's very powerful. Just go home and raise a family. Go home and raise 4 children. Like I have, or 5 children, or 2 children, or whatever you can do. Just go and raise a family. Because the process of that. Last week I had a moment as a parent where, you go for the non-creative control. Right? Instead of really prayerfully responding to your child in a moment, you go for this is what's going to happen. Bang. And just yesterday, I woke up and I was praying, and I was so convicted about that I had to call that child and just apologize. It wasn't like I did something so horrible, but it was just apologizing and saying, I went for the cheap, fast thing. I got the response I wanted out of you. But I don't know if I really parented you well in that moment. I just controlled you. And what I really needed to do was wait for a moment, slow down, look for the creative, breath of God, and be exactly what God needed me to be as a parent in your life at that moment. And I'm sorry. It was a great conversation. It was quick. It was like 2 minutes. But sometimes we're just racing ahead and we go for the cheap. But even raising children, and there's an entire generation now that, I get so excited when my daughter Emma's like, I want to have, children. And, that every time we have a marriage celebration, the church should be dancing in the streets. Because it's hope for the future. And it's a slow hope for the future, right? It's going to take time. But that's how we change the world. It's like Mother Teresa says, you want to change the world? Go home and raise a family. I love that because raising a family takes so much time. It's not a speech that you put out on YouTube. It's not even a worship song. It's the hard work, the farming of parenting. And it's the work that the children do on the parents too. So I wrote a song about it, and we'll finish with this today. God bless you guys.
been waiting, I've been searching for a sign. I've been watching, I've been listening. Hope is keeping me alive. Look at the sunrise, look at the birds fly. Let the wind blow in your hair. Look at the rain fall on the thirsty soul. Everything belongs. I've been wondering about you lately, of how your life is gonna be. Will you marry, have some children? Will you grow a family? Well, life can break you, isolate you, but please don't choose to be alone. Let forgiveness, let it walk beside you and help you find your way back home. And look at the sunrise, look at the birds fly, and let the wind blow in your hair. Look at the rain fall on the thirsty soul. Everything belongs. We've got a long, long way to go, and so many things we just don't know. But beauty is waiting to behold. Don't let it slip away. Don't let it get away. To be present into the future, we've got to leave the past behind and let wisdom